Fear can be a prison, but letting go of it, letting go of fear, can be incredibly liberating. It's interesting to be in a police station and feel relief rather than fear. That fear belongs on Lake Moorthorne. To be clear, I didn't harm anyone. The blood they found in my house belongs to a missing man from 2 decades ago, long presumed dead. So how was his fresh blood found in my living room? What had been his bargain with the ferryman? The lake has the answers, the ferryman has the power, but I can't go back there. So I sit back in the uncomfortable chair, the stark interrogation room, feeling relaxed for the first time in a while. Then suddenly I come to. I realise I've blanked out for about 5 minutes. My solicitor is talking to me, seemingly in a hurry to get away. He drinks the water from the glass, wrinkles his nose, and then packs up his papers. It will be okay. This is circumstantial at best. The water in his glass continues to swirl. I'll file these and I'll be in touch. We can hopefully sort bail in the next few days. I mean, you've never been in any trouble with the law in your entire life. And he left. I looked down at the notepad which was in front of me. There was a strange message, scrawled in an unfamiliar hand. Thank you for your time. The ferryman. Somehow he had been here. He had travelled through water. The solicitor's glass, where the water was still swirling, tap water, linked throughout the village. He had been recruiting, using my time, my body as an incubator, to reach others. I had had enough. 2 years later. I was released from prison on a bright summer's morning, but I didn't feel joy. I felt unease. I had felt safe in prison, inside walls where what was let in and out was strictly regulated. The source of the water was different from my village, and the ferryman could not reach me there. I had slept peacefully. My crime? It was so circumstantial. A body found on the road, long dead, yet put down to a hit and run, completely soaked through, yet strangely preserved. The person who had disappeared years before. No one knew where they had been, and I had no connection to them. I could have got off, but I decided to admit to the crime. My lawyer was baffled, and I knew the ferryman would be vexed and annoyed. That made me smile. But I reasoned in a prison far away from Lake Moorthorne, I would at least have a chance of safety, and time to plan my next steps. I calculated that overall, he had taken about 40 minutes of the hour I had pledged. That left 20 minutes for him to wreak havoc in our world, just by accessing me. I couldn't imagine how many other bargains had been made over the centuries. So I was released for good behaviour, and because of someone else. Detective Inspector Alex Mercer. D.I. Mercer had studied my case and then asked to see me in person. He worked out of Rothbury and said there were similarities between my case and others. He'd found patterns in cold cases from towns or villages, all with lakes. Somehow, before he'd sat down with me, he knew I was innocent. But he also knew there was more to the story. He began visiting me in prison, and over time, trust was built. He brought with him some case files, and I saw how he had linked the cases together. He also had a personal connection with the lake, Scar Bay, near where he had grown up in Yorkshire. The ferryman's jurisdiction was wide, not just Lake Moorthorne. I felt scared. I thought I was protecting people by staying in a prison, but I wasn't. Who knows how many recruits he had? It turns out not as many as I thought, at least not in our area. But I didn't want to think about his access to over 40,000 lakes across the British Isles. D.I. Mercer explained his connection to his lake. As a child, he had been boating with his grandmother when he fell in. He remembers her grabbing him quickly and pulling him back. He says she stood up in the boat and raised her hands as though to ward off something, and muttered an incantation. He heard a roar from far away, and then sudden stillness. Whatever his grandmother had done gave him protection on the lakes. The ferryman could not touch him. Dozens of cases D.I. Mercer believed were tied back to the ferryman. Bodies appearing decades after being reported missing. Strange disappearances near water. People behaving unusually, and then moving away, seeking remote, barren locations. Like me, he only drank carefully filtered water. We devised a plan. One night, we went down to Lake Moorthorne. The water was still, but somehow warmer. I think it was Alex's presence. For the first time in more than 2 years, I felt hope. Alex touched the lake, and then kept a respectful distance away from the water's edge. The familiar blue lights appeared, dancing around the dark water as the barge slowly came into view. The ferryman stood at the helm, his eyes scanning us when he was a metre or so away from the shoreline.
"Hello, Alex. Wonderful to see you again."
His tone was different with Alex, still sardonic, but there was a hint of disquiet. He seemed unnerved. The ferryman shot me a look.
"Alex, I see you've made a new friend. How nice."
But he didn't address me. He waited for Alex to speak. Alex said, "We understand you have business on land. We understand, and we don't wish to interfere." The ferryman looked surprised, but said nothing. "However, we feel this area is depleted." Again, he said nothing. "We have a suggestion. We will offer you memories." Now the ferryman looked alert. "From people who no longer need them. And in exchange, you release Stephen from the remainder of his debt." The ferryman considered.
More memories. They are a continuous source of use for me. But no, the time owed to me remains owed. You have not thought this negotiation through, Alex. Time is much more valuable.
The ferryman smiled darkly, his features just visible. Alex rocked back on his feet. He wasn't bothered. "Stephen, over to you." I took my trainers and socks off, took a deep breath, and we hoped our plan would work. But this was also a leap of faith into the lake. I walked into the water, keeping my eyes on the ferryman. His eyes sparkled with interest.
"Well, Stephen, does this mean you've tired of the tussle? Decided after all to end our contract? Well, it is your choice."
He moved the barge closer and stretched out an arm, lazily. The water under him began to ripple, to move towards me. And then something happened. It just stopped. No more ripples, no rumble, just silence.
"What is this?"
The ferryman was furious. Alex laughed. "My grandmother knew what she was doing, ferryman. I can extend that protection to those near me. And I choose to extend it to Stephen. We offered you an alternative. You rejected it. He willingly entered the water, and now you cannot touch him. Therefore, you have released the rest of what was owed." The ferryman was silent. Somehow his silence was more terrifying than any of his cool, menacing threats.
"Very well, Alex. You and your grandmother are excellent negotiators. Stephen, you are released from the rest of your contract."
The blue lights dancing around the barge dimmed slightly, and the water cooled. I breathed a sigh of relief, but waded quickly out of the lake.
"But Stephen,"
the ferryman's eyes glinted angrily,
"there is one caveat. The lake is my domain. You are not welcome here. Alex's protection has an expiry date, and when that date arrives, well, it would be wise if you were somewhere unreachable."
He smiled, like someone who knew they could play and win a very long game. He sighed and gave us a mock bow, and laughed as the barge disappeared into the dark, the blue lights following him. "So this isn't over," I said, turning to Alex. "No, but this is a reprieve, and I take that as a win. There'll be no more unexplained deaths for a while. No more innocent people taking the rap for his deeds. What did he mean by an expiry date? Alex thought for a moment. I'm not sure. My grandmother left behind some diaries. I'll see if there is anything else in there. But for now, we celebrate. Live in the moment while we can. That was a year ago, and I've not seen the Ferryman since. I am now working as a private investigator, my conviction overturned, and I'm beginning to rebuild my life. I have a special water filtration system installed in my small cottage. Expensive, yes, but I know the real cost of not paying attention to water. I still work with Alex, and I can sometimes go where he cannot to ask questions. I'll always believe those who've been troubled by the supernatural. I'll listen where others would scoff. The future feels hopeful, but I am careful. I occasionally see ripples in puddles that shouldn't be there. I will make sure I keep my word to the Ferryman. Thank you for listening, and join us next week for another story.